The Great Hall of Harmony Prime stretched for nearly a kilometer. Crystal walls reflected the light of 1,000 stars, and 12 platforms floated in a perfect circle around the central speaking floor. Each platform held the representatives of a different species. For 300 years, humanity had stood among them as equals. Today, that would end. Admiral Park stood at the back of the human platform, his gray uniform crisp despite the tension in the air. He was 63 years old, and he had given 40 years of his life to protecting not just humanity, but the entire Galactic Council. His ships had defended colonies from pirates. His soldiers had died saving worlds from asteroid impacts. None of that seemed to matter anymore. Stood at the front of the platform, her hands steady even as her heart raced. She was humanity's lead diplomat, and she had spent 20 years building bridges between species. Now she watched those bridges burn. The high speaker rose on its 6 legs, compound eyes glittering with cold light. The species had always been uncomfortable around humans. They found human emotions disturbing, human reproduction alarming, and human ambition terrifying. "The evidence is clear," the high speaker said, its voice clicking and buzzing through the translator. "Humans multiply too quickly. They consume resources at dangerous rates. They push into territories that were promised to others. And most troubling of all, they are unpredictable. We cannot calculate their behavior. We cannot trust their intentions." A rumble of agreement came from the platform. The reptilian warriors had once respected humanity's fighting spirit, but respect had turned to fear over the centuries. Humans learned too fast. They adapted too well. What would happen when they decided they wanted more than their share of the galaxy? Stepped forward to speak, but the war chief raised a clawed hand to stop her. "We have heard enough human words," the war chief growled. "Your species talks of peace while building warships. You speak of cooperation while your colonies spread like a disease. The vote will proceed." One by one, the species cast their decisions. The voted for exile. The voted for exile. The gentle, who had always been humanity's friends, voted against exile, but their voices were too few. The ancient, the young, the mysterious void walkers, 9 of 12 voted to cast humanity out. Finally found her moment to speak. She walked to the center of the hall, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "You are making a terrible mistake," she said. Her voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "We have fought beside you. We have bled for you. We have shared our technology, our medicine, our art. And this is how you repay us, with exile." The high speaker made a dismissive gesture. "Your contributions do not outweigh your dangers." "Then hear this," continued. "The galaxy is vast and full of unknowns. There will come a day when you face something you cannot defeat alone. On that day, you will remember what you did here. You will remember that you threw away your strongest ally because we made you uncomfortable." "Enough," the war chief snapped. "Remove her." Guards moved toward, but Admiral Park stepped between them. For a moment, the old warrior and the reptilian soldiers stared at each other. The tension was thick enough to cut. "We will leave peacefully," said. "You do not need to drag us out like criminals. We have more dignity than that." He took her arm and guided her back to the human platform. Behind them, Captain Lee was trembling with rage. The young officer's hands kept moving toward his sidearm. "Admiral," whispered fiercely, "we cannot accept this. Our fleet is strong. We could fight." "And then what?" replied quietly. "We kill thousands, millions. We prove them right about us being dangerous." He shook his head. "No, we leave with our heads high. We show them what honor looks like. And someday they will remember." The human delegation walked out of Harmony Prime for the last time. Outside, shuttles waited to take them back to their ships. The united human fleet hung in orbit, 300 vessels that had protected Council space for generations. Now they were being sent into the darkness. Looked back at the Crystal Station one last time. "Do you really believe they will regret this?" she asked. The old admiral's eyes were hard. "I know they will. The universe has a way of teaching humility to those who think they are safe. The fleet gathered at the boundary marker, an ancient beacon that marked the edge of Council space. Beyond it lay the soulless expanse, a region of dead stars and barren worlds. The Council had chosen humanity's prison well. Nothing useful existed out there. No resources, no habitable planets, no hope. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of his cruiser, watching the boundary marker grow closer. Around him, his crew was silent. Some were crying. Others simply stared at nothing, their faces empty. "All ships," Admiral's voice came over the fleet channel. "This is not the end. This is a beginning. They have sent us into the wilderness, but we are humans. We have survived ice ages. We have survived plagues. We have survived ourselves. We will survive this." The first ship crossed the boundary, then the second, then all 300. Behind them, the Council species celebrated. The human problem was solved. The unpredictable species was gone. The galaxy could return to its peaceful routine. None of them noticed the darkness between the stars. None of them heard the ancient hunger stirring in the void. And none of them imagined that the species they had just exiled would become the only thing standing between them and extinction. The last human ship crossed the marker and vanished into the black. The boundary beacon flickered once, then went dark. Humanity was alone. 150 years had passed since the exile. The Council had forgotten about humanity. They assumed the exiled species had died out in the barren soulless expanse, or perhaps survived as primitive scavengers on lifeless rocks. They were wrong. Stood at the edge of a cliff on the planet they had named New Hope. Below her stretched a city of glass and light, home to 3 million people. Towers reached toward the purple sky. Flying vehicles moved between buildings like streams of silver fish. Gardens bloomed on every rooftop, green and alive in a world that had once been dead rock. 50 years ago, this planet had no atmosphere. Had changed that. She was the chief engineer of the human remnant, and she had spent her entire life making the impossible possible. "The latest report from the settlement," her assistant said, handing her a tablet. "Population has reached 500,000. They are asking for more terraforming equipment." Smiled. When humanity first arrived in the soulless expanse, they had found nothing but dust and darkness. The Council had been right about one thing. This region had no natural resources worth taking, but they had been wrong about everything else. Humans did not need perfect conditions. They needed challenges. In the early years, things had been desperate. Ships ran out of fuel. Food supplies dwindled. People died from radiation, from hunger, from despair. But they did not give up. They learned to extract energy from dead stars. They developed new ways to grow food in artificial light. They built habitats in the shells of ancient asteroids. And then they found the ruins. President remembered the day clearly. He had been a young soldier then, part of an exploration team sent to map a distant moon. They had found structures buried beneath the ice, buildings made of materials that should not exist, covered in writing that no one could read. The architects, that was what humanity called the ancient species that had left these ruins behind. They had vanished millions of years ago, but their technology remained. It took decades to understand even the smallest pieces of it. But humans were patient, and humans were clever. Now, 150 years after the exile, humanity had ships that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had shields that could stop stars. They had become something far greater than the species the Council had thrown away. Stood before the human parliament, his white hair glowing under the lights. He was old now, one of the last people alive who remembered the exile, but his voice was still strong. "We have received reports," he said, "that the Council is thriving. They believe they are safe. They have forgotten us completely." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Some of you think we should remind them. Some of you want revenge." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The anger was still there, even after 5 generations. Parents told their children about the exile. Teachers showed students recordings of being silenced. The wound had not healed. I understand your anger, continued. I share it, but revenge is not who we are. We did not survive the wilderness to become monsters. We survived to become something better. He gestured to a screen behind him. It showed a star map, not of council space, but of something far more distant. 3 months ago, Doctor's team activated an architect beacon on the far edge of our territory. The beacon contained a message, a warning. The screen changed to show alien symbols, then a translation. The DVORS sleep. When they wake, only unity SURVIVES. The chamber went silent. Doctor stepped forward. She was young, barely 40, with sharp eyes and nervous hands. She had spent her career studying architect ruins, and this discovery had shaken her to her core. We do not know exactly what the Devourers are, she said. The architect records are incomplete, but from what we have found, they are some kind of swarm intelligence. Ships that consume entire worlds for fuel. They destroyed the architects. They destroyed dozens of other civilizations, and according to the beacon, they are not dead. They are only sleeping. Where? Someone shouted from the back of the chamber. Beyond the galaxy, replied. In the dark space between stars, the architects believed they would wake again someday. They built the beacons to warn whoever came after them. President raised his hand for silence. This brings us to a choice. Do we warn the council? Do we tell them what is coming? The debate lasted for days. Some argued that humanity owed the council nothing. Let them face the Devourers alone. Let them learn what it felt like to be abandoned. Others said that was exactly the kind of thinking that had led to humanity's exile in the first place. Fear and selfishness had broken the galaxy once. It should not be allowed to break it again. In the end, the vote was close. 53% chose silence. Humanity would continue building in secret. They would prepare for the Devourers on their own. If the council fell, that was not humanity's problem. Left the parliament chamber feeling sick. She had voted to warn them. She had lost. Do you think we made the right choice? She asked as they walked through the gardens outside. The old president was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, he finally said. But I know this, when the Devourers wake, the council will come begging for our help, and we will have to decide again, to save them or to watch them burn. Far away in the void between galaxies, something stirred. It had been sleeping for 2 million years, dreaming of hunger and fire. Now, slowly, it began to wake. The darkness was coming. Shin watched the destruction from her ship's viewing window. She was an intelligence officer, born 50 years after humanity's exile. She had grown up hearing stories about the dangerous humans who had once threatened galactic peace. She had believed those stories. Now she was not sure what to believe. The Devourer swarm had appeared 3 months ago. They came from the darkness between galaxies, millions of ships that looked like twisted combinations of metal and flesh. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. The Dominion had been the first to respond. The reptilian warriors had gathered their entire armada, 8,000 warships crewed by the finest soldiers in the galaxy. They met the Devourers at the edge of council space, confident in their strength. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every ship was gone, eaten, absorbed. The Devourers did not even slow down. Now the swarm was spreading across the galaxy like a disease. Worlds fell silent one by one. Billions died. The council species who had lived in peace for so long had forgotten how to fight. Their weapons were outdated. Their tactics were useless. They were prey. Shin's mission was simple but desperate. Find the humans. Beg for their help. The council had spent 2 centuries pretending humanity did not exist. Now humanity was their only hope. Her ship crossed into the soulless expanse, the barren region where humans had been sent to die. She expected to find ruins. Instead, she found something that made her compound eyes widen with shock. A fleet surrounded her ship within minutes. Not 300 vessels like the exiled human fleet. 10,000 ships, massive battlecruisers with weapons she could not identify. Sleek fighters that moved faster than anything she had ever seen. Technology that made council ships look like children's toys. "Vessel," a voice crackled over her communications system. "You have entered human Confederacy space. State your purpose or be destroyed." Transmitted her diplomatic codes with trembling legs. "I am Shin, representative of the Galactic Council. I come seeking assistance. The Devourers are destroying our worlds. We need help." There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through, older, harder, filled with cold amusement. "This is Admiral O of the Human Defense Fleet. Did I hear you correctly? The Galactic Council needs our help." "Yes," said, "please, millions are dying." "I remember when millions of humans died," O replied. "In the early years of exile, starvation, disease, radiation poisoning. The Council did not seem concerned then." Felt shame burning through her body. She had read the histories. She knew what her ancestors had done. "I cannot undo the past. I can only ask for mercy in the present." Another pause. "You will be escorted to our capital. Chancellor will decide whether to grant you an audience. I suggest you pray to whatever gods your species believes in." The human Confederacy capital was a planet called Haven. Gasped when she saw it. The world was beautiful, blue oceans, green continents, cities that shimmered like jewels. This was not the desperate survival she had expected. This was a thriving civilization. Chancellor met her in a simple meeting room with no guards and no ceremony. The Chancellor was a woman in her 60s, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She listened quietly as delivered the Council's plea. When finished, leaned back in her chair. "Your ancestors called us dangerous," she said softly. "They said we were unpredictable, a threat to galactic peace. They threw us into the darkness and celebrated when we disappeared." "I know," whispered. "Now the Devourers are eating your worlds, and suddenly our danger is useful. Our unpredictability is an asset." Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The universe has a cruel sense of humor." "Will you help us?" asked. "That is not for me to decide alone. Our parliament will vote." The Chancellor stood and walked to the window. "But I will tell you something, Shin. Many of my people want to watch the council burn. They have waited 200 years for revenge. You are asking me to deny them that satisfaction." "I am asking you to be better than we were," said. "To show mercy when we showed none." Turned back to her, something flickering in her eyes. "That is a dangerous argument to make. It might actually work." 3 days later, the human parliament gathered to vote. Admiral O argued against intervention. "Let them suffer as we suffered," he said. "Let them understand what it means to be abandoned." Others disagreed. A young representative named stood and spoke with passion. "The Devourers will not stop with the Council. They will come for us eventually. We can fight them now with allies, or we can fight them later alone. The math is simple." The vote was close. 54% chose to intervene. Chancellor addressed the Council through communications relay. Her message was broadcast to every surviving Council world. "We are coming," she said, "not because you deserve our help, not because we have forgiven you. We are coming because we are human and we do not let the innocent die when we can save them. But remember this, when the Devourers are gone, we will still remember what you did to us. We will remember everything." The human defense fleet powered up its engines. 10,000 ships moved toward the boundary marker that humanity had crossed 2 centuries ago, exiled and broken. They were returning as the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. And the Devourers would learn what it meant to face humanity's anger. Commander stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Through the viewing window, she could see the human defense fleet spreading across the stars like a wave of silver light. Behind her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. They had trained their entire lives for war, even though most of them had never seen one. Today, that would change. "Commander," her tactical officer reported, "we are approaching the Devourer presence confirmed. Approximately 50,000 enemy vessels." 50,000. The number would have terrified the old Council fleets. Simply nodded. "Signal all ships. Standard engagement pattern. Let's show these monsters what they're dealing with." The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like predators bursting from shadows. The Devourers, twisted combinations of metal and living tissue, turned to face them. For 200 years, nothing had challenged their hunger. Every species they encountered had been easy prey. Humanity was not easy prey. The Indomitable fired first. Beams of energy that burned hotter than stars cut through Devourer ships like knives through paper. Human fighters swarmed around the larger vessels, moving with speed and coordination that seemed impossible. Explosions lit up the darkness as Devourer ships died by the hundreds. On the below, billions of terrified insects watched the battle. They had prepared for death. Instead, they witnessed a miracle. Nam was one of those human pilots. He was 26 years old, born on a colony ship during the early days of rebuilding. His grandmother had told him stories about the exile, how his great-great-grandparents had starved in those first terrible years, how the Council had celebrated while humans suffered and died. Had grown up hating the Council species. Now he was fighting to save them. "Enemy formation breaking up," his wingman reported. "They're retreating." For the first time in the war, the Devourers were running. Human weapons, built on architect technology that the Council had never discovered, were tearing them apart. The swarm that had seemed unstoppable was suddenly vulnerable. Chased a group of fleeing Devourer ships past a damaged transport. Through his cockpit window, he could see insects pressed against the transport's viewing ports, watching him with their strange, compound eyes. He felt a flash of anger. These were the descendants of the species that had voted for humanity's exile. Why should he risk his life for them? Then he saw the children, young, smaller, and softer than the adults, clinging to their parents in terror. Thought of his grandmother's stories. She had always ended them the same way. "We did not survive the exile to become what they feared. We survived to become better." He turned his fighter and flew toward the transport. "Vessel, this is human pilot Nam. Form up behind me. I will escort you to safety." The battle for the lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Devourers had lost over 30,000 ships. Human losses were less than 200. The Council species watching from their hiding places could not believe what they had seen. Ambassador arrived on Harmony Prime 1 week later. The great crystal hall where humanity had been exiled 200 years ago was now filled with desperate, frightened representatives. The High Speaker, a descendant of the one who had voted against humanity, bowed his head as entered. "We thank you," the High Speaker said. "We know we do not deserve your help." Looked around the hall. She had seen recordings of being dragged from this very room. The anger burned inside her, but she kept her voice calm. "You are correct. You do not deserve our help, but we are not fighting for you. We are fighting because the Devourers threaten all life, including our own. We are fighting because innocent people are dying. And we are fighting to prove that humanity is better than the fear you once felt toward us." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But let me be clear. This alliance is temporary. When the Devourers are destroyed, we will return to our space. We will not forget what happened here 200 years ago. We will not pretend that exile never occurred. Your apologies are noted, but apologies cannot bring back the millions of humans who died in the wilderness because you were afraid of us." The hall was silent. No one dared to speak. Meanwhile, the war continued. Human fleets pushed the Devourers back system by system. Commander became famous across the galaxy, the human warrior who never lost a battle. Pilot Nam earned medals for saving 17 Council transports, including 3 vessels whose crews had initially refused to accept human help. But the Devourers were adapting. They had never faced an enemy like humanity before, and they were learning. Their ships became harder to kill. Their tactics became more sophisticated. Human losses began to mount. Admiral O called a strategy meeting aboard the Indomitable. The old warrior looked tired. He had been fighting for months without rest. Intelligence has located the Devourer Central Node, he announced. A planet-sized organism hidden in dark space. It controls the entire swarm. If we destroy it, the Devourers will collapse. How do we reach it? Asked. That is the problem. The node is protected by millions of Devourer ships. Any fleet we send would be destroyed before it got close. O pulled up a display. We need a small strike team. Fast ships that can slip through the defenses. Enough firepower to destroy the node once they reach it. That's a suicide mission, someone said. Yes, the Admiral agreed. It is. But without it, the war will continue until one side is completely destroyed, and I am not certain we will be the side left standing. The meeting ended without a decision, but Commander knew what had to be done. She had read the Architect warnings. She had seen what the Devourers were capable of. Someone had to end this. She began planning the mission in secret. The final battle was coming. The largest fleet in galactic history gathered at the edge of dark space. 10,000 human warships, 5,000 council vessels, everything the remaining species could contribute. Together, they faced the void where the Devourer Central Node waited. Commander stood before the assembled officers, her face calm despite the fear churning in her stomach. The plan is simple. The main fleet will engage the Devourer defenses and draw their attention. Meanwhile, a strike team will slip through the chaos and reach the central node. We carry an Architect weapon, a device capable of destroying the node from within. Who leads the strike team? A captain asked. Before could answer, Admiral O stepped forward. I do. The room went quiet. Was 73 years old. He had commanded the human defense fleet since its creation. He was a symbol of humanity's strength and survival. Admiral said carefully, "This mission is a suicide mission." "Yes, I know," the old man smiled. "I have lived long enough, Commander. I remember the exile. I remember the hunger and the death and the despair. I also remember what we built from nothing. I have seen humanity at its worst and its best." He looked around the room. "You young ones deserve a future. Someone old should pay the price for it." No one argued. They knew he had already made his decision. The battle began 12 hours later. The main fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel and immediately came under attack. Millions of Devourer ships swarmed toward them, a wave of hunger and destruction that blotted out the stars. Commander fought from the bridge of the Indomitable. Her ship's weapons fired continuously, cutting through Devourer vessels by the thousands. Around her, human and council ships fought side by side for the first time in 200 years. Pilot Nam flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire. His squadron had been assigned to protect a carrier, the same species that had voted for humanity's exile. 2 years ago, he would have refused. Now he threw his ship between the carrier and an incoming Devourer swarm without hesitation. His wingman shouted, "What are you doing?" "What my grandmother would want me to do," he replied, "being better than our enemies." His fighter took heavy damage. Alarms screamed in his cockpit, but the carrier survived. As emergency crews pulled from his burning ship, an officer approached him. The creature knelt, something never did, and spoke through its translator. "You saved us, why?" Thought about the question. His grandmother's stories, the exile, the hatred he had carried his whole life, and then the children on that transport, terrified and innocent. "Because if I let you die, the people who exiled us win," he said. "They believed we were monsters. Proving them wrong matters more than revenge." Deep in the darkness, Admiral O's strike team approached the central node. Only 3 ships remained from the original 10. The others had been lost breaking through the defenses. The node was horrifying, a planet-sized mass of twisted flesh and metal pulsing with dark energy. Tendrils stretched from its surface like roots, connecting to the millions of devourer ships throughout the galaxy. This was the brain, the heart, the source of everything. All ships, commanded, prepare to deliver the payload. They had one chance, one shot. If they failed, the war would continue until nothing remained. Ship accelerated toward the node, carrying the architect weapon in its core. Devourer defenders swarmed around him, tearing at his ship's shields. Alarms filled the bridge. His crew died one by one as sections of the ship were destroyed. But he kept going. "This is Admiral O," he transmitted to the fleet. "I am in position. Weapon is armed." Admiral Commander's voice crackled through the static. "It has been an honor." "The honor was mine, Commander. Tell them." He paused, watching the node fill his. "Tell them we never stopped being human." He activated the weapon. Light, blinding, terrible, beautiful light. The architect device detonated inside the central node, releasing energy that the ancient builders had designed to destroy exactly this kind of enemy. The node screamed, a psychic wave that touched every mind in the galaxy, and then collapsed in on itself. Across the galaxy, devourer ships went dark. The connection to their hive mind was gone. Without it, they were nothing but empty shells drifting in space. The swarm that had threatened all life simply stopped. The war was over. Admiral O's ship was caught in the explosion. No wreckage was ever found. He had given his life to save everyone, human and alien alike. 3 months later, the Galactic Council gathered in Harmony Prime to honor humanity. The Crystal Hall was filled with representatives from every species. This time, there were no accusations, only gratitude. The Council offered humanity full membership again, a seat on the governing body, leadership of a new galactic defense force, anything they wanted. Chancellor listened to the offer. Then she stood and addressed the hall. "We accept leadership of the defense force. The galaxy needs protection, and we have proven we can provide it, but we decline to rejoin the Council." Shocked murmurs rippled through the hall. "We built something better in exile," continued. "A civilization based on strength, compassion, and the refusal to give up. We will not abandon what we created for the same halls that cast us out. We will be your allies. We will be your defenders, but we will never again be your subjects." She turned and walked out, just as had walked out 200 years before. This time, no one tried to stop her. 1 year later, a memorial station was built in orbit around Haven. The names of every human who died during the exile were carved into black stone walls. Millions of names, millions of stories, millions of lives lost because of fear and prejudice. Ambassador stood before the wall, placing a flower beneath the name, Admiral O. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Behind her, a delegation waited. They had come to pay respects, the first aliens to visit the memorial. They stood in silence, finally understanding what humanity had lost and what they had overcome. An elderly man approached. His name was Bay, and he had spent his entire life documenting humanity's journey. He carried a book, the final volume of his history. "I finished it," he said. "Would you like to hear the ending?" Nodded. Bay opened the book and read aloud. "They called us dangerous, and they were right. We were dangerous to despair, dangerous to hopelessness, dangerous to the belief that exile meant extinction. They threw us into the darkness expecting us to die. Instead, we found light. We built cities on dead worlds. We unlocked secrets that ancient civilizations had hidden for millions of years. And when the galaxy faced destruction, we returned not as conquerors but as saviors. History will remember the Council's fear, but it will also remember humanity's response. We did not become the monsters they expected. We became something greater. We became proof that compassion is stronger than hatred, that hope is stronger than despair, and that humanity, broken, exiled, abandoned humanity, does not die. We endure, we adapt, we overcome. And we never forget. The delegation listened in silence. Then, one by one, they bowed their heads. The memorial station turned slowly in orbit, carrying its cargo of names and memories. Below, Haven glowed blue and green, a living world built by stubborn, brilliant, dangerous humans who refused to accept extinction. The exile was over, the reckoning was complete, and humanity's story was only beginning.